Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Jim Ryan. For those that don't know Jim, well, dirt sports was his baby. Before that, he worked with the others in the magazine industry, and now he's the marketing and sales director at Score. And we are really happy to have Jim Ryan on board. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait to get this conversation started. So, Jim, thank you so much for coming on board.
Thanks, Big Rich. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, didn't get a chance to talk to last year because of COVID and all the shows that I normally see you at. They were shut down. So hopefully this year we'll get to see you at either SEMA or I won't be going to Off-Road Expo, but maybe at SEMA.
Correct. Yeah, we're planning on being back and operating at all those operations right now.
Excellent. Well, let's explore your life and share with our listeners about Jim Ryan. Where did you grow up? Where were you born and raised?
Sure. Well, yeah, it's been a while, but Northern California to start with until early teen years. And my dad got promoted and transferred back to the Midwest, of all places, to the corporate headquarters where he was working. And I went to finished high school and college back there, and then came back out with the motorcycle industry as soon as I graduated from college.
What town in Northern California? Because that's a big area.
Walnut Creek.
Walnut Creek.
Walnut Creek. Yeah, born in Berkeley, raised in Walnut Creek. It was still a little town. All those were pretty rural areas at the time. I know they're not now, but it was a great time.
You said you were at early teens, then you went to the Midwest. Your dad got transferred? Correct,
to Canton, Ohio.
Canton, whoa.
Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So that was the corporate headquarters where my dad got kind of promoted. We moved from San Francisco office to Canton, Ohio, it's good. It was a good place to grow up, good people, good way of life. So it was good. So that kind of started, that's where my first interest in anything off-roading started to happen back in those days.
Okay.
As you can imagine, most kids back then were looking at mini bikes and things like that, and that's where I got started. And then it's into motorcycles. And
you went to then high school then in Canton?
Yeah, Canton. I went to high school in Canton, and then went to the University of Ohio in Athens, which was a great time. And it was very formative years. But yeah, as soon as I got out of college, I got a job in California with the motorcycle industry, which is where I was trying to accomplish. So that got me back out to California and stayed with some friends for a while. I was hired by Cycle News.
Okay.
Which used to be like the internet of the motorsports world. It was a great place, very high intensity. We were still putting out a newspaper-ish tabloid magazine once a week based on race results back then. It was quite the experience. It should be a movie on how all that worked. But a lot of great people went through that system. And it was a really good friends of mine still are from those days.
So while you were, we'll jump back into that here in just a minute, but while you were in high school, this is a question I ask everybody, were you scholastic, athletic, or did your own thing?
A little bit of all of that, I would say.
Okay.
Bookish, I did decent. The athletics, track and cross country, I was the captain of those teams.
Excellent.
For junior and senior years. And from the, well, I forgot your third option, but.
Oh, do your own thing.
Yeah. Now it was basically, went from mini bikes to some the initial dirt bikes from Honda World that were kind of dual purpose. So we were riding those on the weekends, and in terms of general transportation, that's what kind of got me started on anything off-road.
Right.
Went from not too much street ever, just solid off-road from the beginning.
And see, I did just the opposite. I did more street and no off-road.
Yep.
Until I got to like 1981 when I got out
there
of college.
It is.
So
there it is.
Yep. So where did you go to college, and what was your major then? Media?
Yeah, it was. I went to the University of Ohio in Athens.
Okay.
It's a great college in the middle of nowhere. So it's kind of the whole city is the campus. And they specialize in a lot of areas, which I didn't know about at that time, but I ended up in the School of Journalism there, which was one of the highest ranked schools of that. So I just kind of fell into it, and they had fantastic teachers and professors. And they had a pretty unique program where advertising was a major, and it was in the School of Journalism, as opposed to being a subdivision of marketing in the School of Business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I kind of fell into that, and I had major guys from all the agencies in New York and that were teaching there, and it was just fascinating. So I kind of found my niche at that point. Did real well in all of that, and kind of was trying to our special bonus projects and senior projects and all that. I kind of focused on the motocross industry at that point, and developed a campaign to sell myself when you get out of school. That was kind of the project.
Right.
So it was. I went straight after the off-road motorsports, motocross, particularly at that end. I was doing a little bit of motocross and a lot of enduros at that point at the local, Ohio fun level, and that was what my dream was. And that was kind of I figured that out about the beginning of my junior year, so I was lucky enough to make it happen when I got out of college.
Excellent. And when was it that you got out of college?
1802.
1802.
No, it was 1976.
76. Okay, so you're a couple of years older than me.
Couple years older.
Okay, cool. And you're in great shape. I got to give you that.
Okay.
I got to give you that.
Well, everything's kept us pretty busy. We don't have time to think about anything else. So, Score was the latest addition to that, and it's a good exercise for sure during the race weeks and everything else that goes on.
Absolutely. So, those early years at Cycle News, how did you end up with that job? Did you just walk in with a resume and say, "Here I am," and they hired you, or was it a process?
No, it was being in Ohio. I basically I made like a custom resume that I did for my college senior project, and I sent it out to every manufacturer I could see in the magazines at the time,
okay,
which was like Dirt Bike Magazine and Motocross Action and Cycle News. And when I got through all of those topics and their ad agencies, that I was able to figure out who was handling Honda at the time or Kawasaki, and I got through all that. Then I figured, well, I've got all these out of these magazines, so I just sent resumes to all the magazines at the time, and I had a couple interviews, and they were all on the West Coast. So I flew myself out had the interviews, and Cycle News was like the first one I had, and it went really well. And I was reading Cycle News, forever in my dorm rooms in college, and so it was cool. It was a great thing to be part of.
Nice natural fit then. So
yeah.
So what were some of the highlights of those early years at Cycle News for you?
Getting really organized really fast. So when I first came in, you're the new guy, so they kind of give you everything on earth to do. It was really funny. My parents dropped me off at Cincinnati Convention Center, and that's where the big motorcycle industry show, sort of like their SEMA show at that time. And I was just mesmerized. Every major star that I had been reading about was there, and I was getting introduced to them as this kid by Sharon and Chuck Clayton, who owned Cycle News at the time, or were the owners. And that was a pretty eye-opening experience. I just couldn't believe it was happening. But flying back, and we got got situated in Long Beach area where Cycle News was, and it was intense. I mean, everything, they were putting out a magazine every week, not monthly. So it was, I didn't know any better. So I thought this was the normal way to do things, but it was impressive to see how that worked and how fast everything had to work. And I learned a lot of organizational skills, and especially the ad closing things on Motorsports. That was their world. Whatever happened on Sunday, we were selling on Monday.
Right.
And the deadline was Thursday for the press. So that's how fast things came out. Actually, it was Tuesday, now that I think about it, and it came out and the new magazines hit all the motorcycle shops on Thursday. So it was a really fast, never-ending process.
I can't even imagine.
Which we all lived anyway. So we're, the Saddleback Days and Indian Dunes and the rest of those tracks all over, not just in California, but all over the West. So it was, the editors were just amazing. And the Supercross was just becoming a giant deal. And it was a great time to be part of that. For the years I was at Cycle News, it really taught me a lot.
Do you remember what your first article?
Well, with Cycle News, it was great because everybody got to do everything, but I was predominantly there for sales.
Okay.
But I ended up doing a number of articles, and my big claim to fame was I had a cover shot and some major interviews with the Suzuki motocross team during their training exercises. Remember Nautilus equipment?
Oh yeah.
When it was the big regiment training session, I had a big piece on that. So yeah, I wasn't too much on the editorial side at that point, but again, we all shot, and whenever they would let me, I would write something in those days, which was cool. You'd see something printed or get the cover photo or whatever it was. But
so how long did it last at Cycle News?
About 3 years.
Okay.
I think 3.5 years, and then went up to Peterson Publishing, which was the most amazing place on earth in those days. That was kind of where everything was happening. They also, at the time, they probably had about 11 magazines, including Motor Trend and Hot Rod and Carcraft. They were just starting a new off-road magazine called Four Wheel and Off-Road at the time. And that's when I went up there. I went on to Four Wheel and Off Road. It was I think it had just gone monthly, and it was kind of a brand new off road title in that category. But that Peterson Publishing Company was just an amazing place in terms of what its contributions as a Mr. Peterson, his contributions to everything from political aspects to creating SEMA, creating the diving industry's version of SEMA. It's kind of just nonstop what what Mr. Peterson and that whole organization created over those many, many years.
Right. Absolutely.
So I was there for 17 years under the Peterson publishing banner, till he basically had done everything he could possibly do and sold it off to the first of many, many investor groups in the late 90s.
Okay.
But that was another huge learning curve, and outstanding people to work with, the editorial and management teams in sales operations. So it was another huge deal. Obviously, they kind of advanced you as the company was growing so fast. We got to move to different positions and different responsibilities pretty regularly. But it was a really, really great place. Learned a lot there.
So when you went to Peterson's, did you go over in sales and marketing?
Yeah, well, it's just sales.
Sales.
The place was so big. We were part of a major sales team. I handled the Western region at the time for four-wheel and off-road. And as things evolved from that, I'm trying to think of how that worked. But I was moved with Motorcyclist magazine and Dirt Rider for a number of years, and that got anchored. And then they moved me to network sales for the Western region, which was dealing with all the OEMs and other accounts that went across many different titles and categories. And I kind of ran that until the early 90s, and then I moved to a publisher slot, which in those days was a big deal. And I was on a baby magazine. It was called Sport Truck Magazine on the street industry,
right?
Which was a hot ticket back then. The street performance on pickup trucks was becoming huge, and we had major success with that magazine for a long time. Things changed again, and I came back over to four-wheel and off-road to run the basically sales and marketing into that, which was some big years. Great staff. David Freiberger was the editor I worked with when I first came over on that side, and he's done quite well he stayed with Peterson and even beyond for quite a while, and he's now the superstar movie star now on Roadkill and numerous other items that I think it's the Motor Trend Group that is now that company. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
But those were some great years on that. Then we started evolving. I became the truck group director, group publisher. Then it was the off-road group publisher after that. And then we started getting bought out. And I was handling the same group of magazines. Four-wheeler ended up being under my wing for a period also with the other magazines.
As publisher or sales?
Publishers.
Publisher, okay.
So the group publishers, which basically ran sales and worked with the editorial guys.
Okay.
And the marketing programs.
And the marketing
for sure.
Programs,
that just was kind of all encompassing.
I was always impressed with everything that whole Peterson group did. And then with all the different magazines that you worked with, was there one that has stood out that you said that was my favorite?
At Peterson years, yeah, I would say four-wheel and off-road.
Okay.
It really was transforming, and it had a lot to do with the editorial. David Freiberger was spot on with how he was reading the marketplace, and the explosion in circulation obviously gave us a lot of tools on the advertising side and marketing side. But I would say that one basically, I think a lot at Peterson years, that was definitely the one title that stuck with me.
And like you said, everybody, at least at Cycle News, wore a lot of hats. Was the same thing happening at Peterson?
No. It was such a giant company that was not expected. We did, just by nature of the business, we worked as teams, but it was not the assignment like it was out of necessity back in the earlier days. But we had a stellar editorial group, and they were all run by a group editorial director, and circulation departments and events divisions and many other tools that we're just very fortunate to use for sales and marketing purposes. The Peterson Ranch, the yacht, the airplane. Those were days with expense reports, and we're expected to be out meeting with clients nonstop. So it was an era, that is for sure.
Southern California really has been the hub of so much of the automotive industry, at least with the new waves and anything new that comes along typically seems to come out of Southern California. What was the thing that you thought in all those things that happened down in Southern California that was like a monumental moment, one of those epic something happening?
Interesting. That is very interesting. I mean, in the motorcycle era, it was Supercross.
Right.
The Mickey Thompson series for the off-road end of it. Those are kind of galvanizing entities that were new, and expanding the marketplace with television and big seat arenas, and held their own for a lot of years. I think they brought the OEMs, either one, whether it was motorcycles and Supercross or Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Toyota, Nissan, Isuzu into off-road racing. The Mickey Thompson deal was kind of the first step before they really made major inroads into what is now Score and the other off-road areas.
Okay.
But that on that side, in terms of the OEMs, helped drive that a lot. Also, by coming in and getting involved with, again, from a motorsports perspective, they helped market the entire category. Something like Toyota and Ivan Stewart and Nissan had numerous high teams of Ford Rough Riders. Those are all big programs for marketing the off-road motorsports hook. But that obviously, that's the halo effect, right?
Yes.
All motorsports is kind of the top end cool part that everybody would like to be involved with, but they want to be associated with it through the lifestyles.
It's sure hard to get those manufacturers involved nowadays.
Yeah, that's an understatement. That would be another hour-long show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sad to see where they were and where they are, but there's a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Different times, different accountabilities, different everything. But we're still working nonstop. It's the other side of it is the market we deliver now is 100 times bigger than it was then. But it's luckily we are working with a number of OEMs right now at the current job.
Right, with Score, exactly. So let's discuss where that transition happened from the Peterson Publishing or whatever group it happened to be when you decided to start Dirt Sports.
Okay, well, I'll tell you as much as I can.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we went through a number of quick buyouts and then settled into a couple other publishing media companies. And every time a little bit would change at the company, or a lot would change towards the end. And you always have your options. You like it or you don't like it. What are you going to do about it? So I had talked about some new concepts in my truck group, my off-road group, in those latter days when I was still there, and I could just see what was shaping up around the industry. And I pitched it, and it didn't go anywhere. So I decided, well, this is still a good idea. So I spent some time kind of getting more details and a little bit more due diligence on it. And I finally decided to go out. And there was another company that took me on, Advanced Star, at the end of that ride on what was Peterson, but that was probably 5 companies removed by that time. That's the initial thought process on dirt sports and the trade show and a trade book. That we launched that in 2004 with AdvanceStar. That's set another whole new path, another layer of exposure, and addressing that part of the market that now is a very viable big player, being motorsports and the lifestyle that went around it. Part of that is watching it over the years. Desert racing had always been around, and you had a good development of the short course series starting to happen in the Midwest with Crandon and Soda, and later evolved into Core, which really started evolving and maturing. And then the part that sealed the deal for me was you, was the rock crawling side. When you guys started getting very organized and having team efforts and schedules and rules and regulations, and there was different versions across the country, which kind of linked coast to coast at that point.
Yes.
Which gave the Western desert racing and then the Midwest short course areas. That kind of made a total blanket on North America in terms of what motorsports activities would be happening, and the racer base and the enthusiast base that was attached to that. So that's when kind of the development of the dirt sports concept came aboard, and that was a really good experience for many years, getting that to happen. We had a really strong staff on that too.
Yeah, that I remember. I was really impressed with what you guys were doing with that. And one of the first things I remember is the Dirt Sports Expo.
Yes.
The first one, and you guys had that promoter roundtable, and you guys asked me to be one of the promoters up there. And I was
That is correct.
I walked up there and I looked around and went, damn, what am I doing up here?
No, it was all part of it. I remember I chaired that, and it was we had, I think, 13 off-road motorsports, basically general managers or owners up there from all the different aspects.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I know that hasn't happened since then, but yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to showcase, kind of its overall impact and strength and what it was in the marketplace, through our other channels like Dirt Sports and the website at the time, and our trade book. We're able to kind of get that message, out there in a professional way.
What was it like taking it from the big corporate setup to basically doing it yourself? Or were you still under AdvanceStar at that point?
Well, yeah, there was an obvious break there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything was going strong. Things, I still think about this. 2008 became we had our trade show in 2008 at Anaheim, and it was basically a sellout on floor space. But when we opened the doors, the dealer turnout, because it was a trade show, is like, and the dealers are free. It's not like they have to pay. And there was just a massive cutback. And we're going, what is going on here? This would have been about March 2008. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the first alarm bell for us on what is going on. The market started slowing down. And then by August, September, it was really getting apparent that something bad was happening. And that's when the market crashed and everything else, as we headed into 2009. But so AdvanceStar started cutting back, and I could see that kind of on the they were going to be doing that on a lot of things back there. So I had already started planning on just taking it out because it was still efficient. And there was still a good ad base and there was still a big reader base. So I took it out, and originally was thinking about some other investors, but not at that time. I mean, everybody was trying to save themselves, right?
Yes.
So timing was great on my part, right? So I just said, hell with it. I'll take it on myself, and did some personal adjustments and brought people in and tried to keep things going on as strong as possible. And we had, it wasn't a surprise to us, but we continued to grow through 2009, which that was pretty amazing at that point, considering what was happening. But so we were out in the fields. It was, I know, probably the same schedule you have now, but I don't. But dirt sports years, I mean, we did about 38 weekends a year out on the different race circuits for the teams and for editorial and for magazine distribution and all of that. So it was kind of our world. But you don't think about much about it when you're doing it, but it was a long time for many, many years being on the road. But it was good. It was with the race teams and the manufacturers, and it was kind of that community that was traveling around together, different areas.
That were all working together to try to save what we were doing. Yeah,
that was the battle cry then, for sure. It was there was a lot of cuts and rightfully so, people traveling and teams and sponsors, and they were all kind of up in the air back then. So we were trying to hold that together from what we could do to help. So yeah, those are some trying days, but they were still pretty rewarding.
True. And 2009, I was going to walk away from being an event promoter, and I had met my wife Shelley, my future wife Shelley, there in that time frame, late 2008, early 2009, and she convinced me to keep it going. And so I could tell everybody at the rock crawls all the time that, if it wasn't for Shelley, We Rock would be gone. And God knows, probably the sport at that time, too, because there was nobody else doing it. So by then, everybody else had left. And I remember when everybody else had gone by the wayside, that Dustin Webster calls me up and goes, "Okay, Rich, you can't quit now." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, there's too many businesses and too many, teams and people that have been building and that rely on rock crawling to keep going. So you have to keep going." And I was like, "Dustin, don't put that on me." It's like,
yeah.
But he was right.
I remember Dustin.
Yep, but he was right.
That's good. That was good. Yes, it was definitely a time to draw the line in the sand somewhere, right?
Yep.
What was going to happen and how, ride it out and hopefully hope for the best after that.
Yeah, we had some pretty lean years there with events on how many teams showed up, but we fought tooth and nail, and we're still doing it, and the sport's growing again. I mean, we're back up to
I noticed
50, 60 cars on the West Coast events, so and in the 20s on the East Coast, so we're getting there.
Yeah, well, congrats on that.
Let's discuss dirt sports and the things that you guys did, particularly what you did in developing that magazine or that part of the lifestyle, your masterpiece in metals.
Yeah.
Talk about those a little bit.
That was from the beginning, and I'll just tell you, the Racer magazine was, I think, the best thing going on at that time, when I was still at the other company, and they had a beautiful, every month they would showcase a vehicle in the studio, and we all thought that was pretty cool. But the technology and all the intricate details that go into off-road vehicles are as much or more so, especially with the development on the some of the higher end, like trophy trucks, for example. But that's what started that. And the funny thing as I tried to emulate some of that. We when I was still over at wasn't Peterson days, but it was still four-wheel and off-road days, and we were at the Indianapolis Fairgrounds for a core race, the one year that they did it there. And I had one of the editors I had with me. I said, I want to do this thing. So we took Rob McCachran's short course truck and we took the body panels off it and shot it against the side of a barn, all the detail work. And then we ran that, and it got like big reviews in four-wheel and off-road at the time. And I said, well, this is kind of where we wanted to start with, but that was kind of the first incubator on something like that. And that was at four-wheel and off-road. I was trying to bring some motorsports activities back in there because they've been gone for years, based upon where the reader surveys were going, and motorsports had kind of, in the 90s, I should say, had kind of just dwindled. But so that's how that started. So we got over to Advanced Star. The whole concept and pitch was bring these back, and we were going to be putting them in the studio. But I have to give credit. I had Marty Fiocca with me at the time. He was doing some freelance stuff up at the other company for me. And I brought him in, and he brought in Boyd Janes, and we had a budget for that type of photography through Advanced Star, and that's where it really started getting polished, and was able to showcase not any one particular form of racing, but all forms of racing. So right. It was a great. It did evolve. I mean, that was Masterpiece of Metal was quite an iconic piece for dirt sports and for the industry.
Yeah, and Boyd was or is a phenomenal photographer and a lighting master.
Yep.
And I can say that because my degree is a commercial photography degree.
Okay.
And I graduated from a school called Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, and back in '81, and it was product advertising and commercial photography was what my degree was in, and lighting. I mean, I did some automotive stuff, but it would be like out on a golf course or something like that. But most of the stuff I did was product, and you sit it on a light table or, in somebody's, factory or whatever, and shooting their stuff. Their product they're putting together brochures and their catalogs when people still had printed catalogs. And when I saw Boyd's first Masterpiece in Metal, and I don't even remember which one it was, but I was just like, I was completely blown away. Had no clue who he was.
Right.
But all of a sudden it was like, damn, they found a great photographer. So
yeah, it was all part of the deal. And you know what the very first one is, as I recall, was a rock crawler. I think Tim Susamian, at the time with Beard seats. I remember a red rock crawler. I think that was our very first Masterpiece of Metal.
I wonder if it was, since it was Beard, if that would have been Jason Shears.
I know. I can't remember that far back, but I think
I'll have to ask Jason that.
It might have been. I still have an archive here.
Oh, excellent.
Somewhere.
So then, what was your favorite part of that magazine? Or, I know you guys did the shows, you did the magazine. There was other aspects of that too. I think you mentioned. What was the pinnacle point for you in that magazine?
Oh, it was just kind of unifying, watching it all come together. Kind of unifying off-road motorsports as a badass area of motorsports in general, against other the other more well-known categories. But we had numbers, and most of all, we had a lot of technology developments going on. Just whatever was coming out, whether it was rock crawling or short course or desert racing. Trophy trucks started getting developed in '94. mean, they were evolving into spaceships at that time.
Yep.
But it was that was cool. But always, I mean, that was the technology hook and the cool factor. But it was always the teams in my mind, and that's kind of continue that right now with what I'm doing. But it's promoting the teams and the individuals and all those type of efforts across the board, because those were the stories. The racing was always the racing, but it was the behind the scenes involvement with the teams and what was going on, and trials and tribulations, and what they had to do, and the relationships we had with them across the board during all those years was really good.
So, what was your circulation? I know that you guys did a lot of stuff at the events, where you would go to the events and you'd give them out there.
Correct.
And you started to get away from the magazine rack. Is that correct?
Correct. 2 reasons. Knowing, I mean, the magazine world was starting to hiccup around, 2010, 11. You could just see kind of newsstand portion of it was. Things were changing, and how people were looking at information or going to the newsstand or whatever it was. The newsstands were getting a little bit, the numbers were getting smaller and smaller, and shelf space was becoming more of a premium on product. I mean, it was a whole deal that I was obviously watching from the old days, that I was still looking at all of that stuff for good reason. So that was kind of, and that was ultimately the entire collapse. Was the newsstand just exploded about in 2014. It didn't exist anymore. Like, outside of women's books and the firearms and outdoor industry have done well still on the newsstand. But other than that, it doesn't really exist anymore.
Well, and then the way you have to deal with the newsstands now, where you're basically, they're taking your magazine, they'll sell it. What doesn't sell, you have to take back. Was
Correct.
that always
and that's
the case?
Never changed.
Okay.
That was always the case.
All right.
And it was an acceptable part of the business for decades and decades. It was you would print twice as many as you would sell and hope for a 50% sell through. That was like outstanding. But you still paid for all the print run on all the rest of the magazines. Right. But it was that era was definitely changing pretty fast. So we just went straight to the end user.
And that's what we followed with 4 Low.
Yeah.
Is we've never been available except through subscription and at events. So it was a model that we took as well. And it's worked well for us, except during COVID, because we didn't do near as many events, or even though we did pull off our season, both East, West, that kind of thing. We still did not, and we had good numbers. It still wasn't the same. I mean, we lost Easter Jeep, we lost Off-Road Expo, we lost SEMA, everything.
Yeah, it's a tough world out there from that perspective.
True.
So we're getting back to that, but I don't think that's going to change magazine world at all.
No.
In fact, when I had the current version, the Score Journal that we work on is a totally different perspective and strategy. It's meant to support the series and everything that has to do with score, from current racers to historical purposes, to score news, to racer information, to all the vehicle stuff, safety, and all of that's good. And
but it's
digital
very specific.
definitely. Yeah, digital has made it a global media entity immediately. We never dreamt it would be what it's doing right now. It was originally supposed to be kind of a newsletter to give the sponsors and the racers kind of more information on what was going on with score, because there was so much going on in those transition years back in 2013, 14. So it it basically became this media entity, which we're happy about. But it was never meant to be 2 million readers a month, which it's doing right now.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's good. It obviously, even though it's a score journal, it transcends the reader bases everywhere because of the information that's in there. It's not just score. It still has to do with, like I said, safety equipment and vehicle features and historical things and personalities and everything. But yeah, so it kind of took a different, that's working for us at this point.
Are you involved with that digital publication then?
Yes. Yeah.
Figured.
quite heavily. I have a staff does a great job on that, but yeah, it's like everything else. It's not something we do full time because there's so many other things that we work on. But we spend 10 days on it, maybe 2 weeks a month on it, and we have a good template and a good working formula right now, so it's doing real well.
Excellent. The score transition that you were talking about with the Normans taking over from Sal, I thought it was going to go a different direction with somebody else, and then when it was announced that Roger was becoming the head of score, I remember I texted him and said, hey, do you need me? And
yeah.
we have helped out on a couple of events and stuff, but I think that it was an interesting transition because people really didn't know what to think. Whether they were the racers or the marketing partners, I don't think the spectators, it was a biggest deal. Although there was all sorts of talk about it on all the
right.
websites at the time. So how do you think it went? When did you jump in with score at that point?
I jumped in about 7 years ago.
Okay.
Basically in August. So that was, there was a lot going on. Score was still really aggressive with Roger. He was definitely taking it to that next level of where it had to go eventually.
Right.
And part of that was SEMA. They had just had a program developed with bringing score trophy trucks to SEMA, and they had gotten all that together, but now they needed somebody to put it together and make it happen from the team perspective and getting it kind of organized with SEMA. So that's why I was originally brought in for that, and everything kind of morphed after that. But that was the immediate goal, was to get that going, and that was a big deal. Getting into, I think the first year we had like 23 trophy trucks there that were for qualifying for the Baja 1000, and SEMA was very generous with the space. We had the entire silver lot in front of the South Hall, and the amount of path needed for the teams, and what evolved into like 35 trophy trucks, I think, in the last year. Shutting down Las Vegas Main Strip to escort those things out to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for qualifying. It was a good run. It was totally necessary. That whole program was developed for getting set up for the 50th anniversary years for the Score Baja 1000 and the Baja 500,
right,
which happened 2017 and 18. So that was the whole purpose of that, to get the Score brand and represent off-road at SEMA for that same purpose.
And 17 was for the 1,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that was actually the last time we did a Peninsula run because of COVID last year. So that's back on this year, the Peninsula run.
Oh, excellent.
To La Paz. But yeah, that had run its course. So we, after the Baja 500 year, we put that just ran its course.
Right.
So those are some big years there.
I remember the 1,000 in 17 because Elise called Shelly and said, "Hey, are you going to be down here? I could use your help." And we were in Alabama at Gulf Shores little conference, and when we got the call like the week before, and we said, "Well, we hadn't planned on it. We don't have rooms," and Elise goes, "Well, I can get you rooms. Don't worry about that. If you get here, we can use you." So
Very good.
that was we made arrangements, which is another story in itself. And then getting home, because we had to hitch a ride down from San Diego when we flew in, and then Jason Cobb had just taken over Trophy Light.
Yeah, right.
And so I drove the box truck with the race car, the pre-runner on the back from the race back to Phoenix so that we could get back to our vehicle. So it was quite the show. But I remember you coming into the Tech and Contingency area the morning of Tech and Contingency, and then having to reset up the fencing. And that was when Elise and Roger put me as like the gate guard for Tech.
Right.
And
right.
Boy, I sure enjoyed that.
Yeah. Like a dentist appointment?
Oh no, really, I enjoyed it.
Oh, okay, good.
I used to I kind of helped work my way through college, doing kind of the same thing in nightclubs.
All right.
So this time it was just dealing with a lot of people that I knew, a lot of people I didn't know, but it was a lot of fun. Telling people only two. And then people team owners would come up and go, "Okay, I want to go to my truck or my car," and I'm like, "Okay, which one of those two in there do you want to come out?"
Right.
And it was great. I had a really good time. I don't know if I made any friends down there that day, but it was.
Yeah, that's a tough job. It's gotten even tighter than that for safety reasons, and then COVID on top of it.
Right, I can imagine.
Yep.
So
yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, so the 2017 was definitely what we were working those years up to, and part of that was getting all the marketing assets developed to support the series, and kind of all hit its stride by 2017. So the Score Journal, started in 2015. The website was in 2015. Social media was getting kind of at least a plan behind it. So all that stuff started getting, again, with the target being getting ready for the 50th anniversary years, which did include live streaming, just kind of getting its feet wet down there. It's a technology issue more than anything, as you already know.
Right.
So it still is, but that's where it started. Just making sure all those tools were available. And a big thing that did occur with Score that Roger did instantaneously was bringing television in for every race. And that became a big driver for exposure for the teams and the sponsor base at the time. And as we grew the sponsor base. Yeah,
I remember having that conversation with Roger, and he goes, "Rich, you got to do TV." And I'm like, "I'm trying." He goes,
"Yeah.
I can't get, the funding." And he goes, "You just got to fund it yourself." And I'm like, "Roger, I'm on a different funding level than you are."
Yeah, it's a different world for sure.
Definitely.
But he was able to do it, and that was a big deal. The first year, 2014, was trophy truck only, just to get a handle on how this was going to happen with CBS Sports. And then, again, that was brand new. Prior to that, from a Score perspective, different production companies would come in about every 3 years and do something on the Baja 1000 or something on the Baja 500, and it was kind of random, and it was good when it was happening. But starting with 2014, it was an hour-long show on every race we had, basically involving trophy trucks. And then for 2015. We went into all the pertinent classes if there was a story to be told. So that's what's kind of held since then, with different television partners. But that's a big deal.
And what year was it that SCORE stopped doing events in the States, in California?
That would have been, let's see, in 2016, maybe.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
what I was
I
thinking.
think 2016, the Imperial Valley race was one in September. It was just kind of brutal. So we moved it to Rosarito Beach in 2016. 2016, and it was great. It was right on the coast. But it became more of a short course lap deal. Not that tight of a course, but it was 40-mile loops, 60-mile loops. And it turns out our guy, we did that for a couple of years. And we did one in Rosarito and then two in Tijuana, Desert Challenge, Lucerna Desert Challenge. And they were great races, but we just finally, decided. Our guys, when they come down to Mexico, they like a lot of seat time. They like the long distance enduro because the effort is the effort, getting ready to come down to Baja.
Right.
And all the aspects that has to do with that. It did help on their chase truck crews. They didn't have to get into logistics on that race, but it was still, it wasn't what SCORE was about at the time. Never say you can't come back, but that morphed into the new Baja 400, which is in September now, and that had a great initial response in 2019. Obviously, we had to postpone and eventually cancel that race last year for COVID, but it's back. That's what we're headed into. That's all our planning and operation stuff is for the Baja 400 now in Ensenada. That's happening this September.
Excellent. And that's just going to be a 400-mile lap, basically?
Yeah, it's a loop race.
Okay.
So that's and it's also the qualifier, position qualifier for the Baja 1000.
Oh, okay.
So it'll do good. It's, again, nice at least to start on the ocean. And then we'll find out soon where the race course is by our race director.
Having put on some races myself, I owned Vora for a few years in the early 2000s, right. And then I had the Dirt Riot series, which was more ultra four-ish, regional type stuff, but everything was shorter course, like 5 to 9 mile loops. What is it like to have enough volunteers and crew to put together even the 500, the 400, or especially the 1,000? Is that right? Is that a nightmare?
It's well, after 53 years, we do have there is a plan,
right?
But it's generational and times change. So yeah, the amount of work that goes into a SCORE race is amazing. That's why we have a full-time staff and operation out of Ensenada now, and that's where the president and general manager are located in the Ensenada office. They deal 100% every day with all levels of the government, from Mexico City, which basically supports SCORE racing now in terms of their own marketing.
Oh, excellent.
Us in F1 and soccer. So we made that happen a couple of years ago. But it's everything from the restaurant and hotel associations to the police departments and security and border crossing, the political end of the border crossing in. So our guys are very busy. Not to mention just the normal working with all the landowners and where the courses are going and permits and under COVID and everything else. So they've done an amazing job of navigating, all these new factors. But so they've done a great job. We were kind of the poster program for Baja in terms of events last year. There had been nothing happening down there until they allowed us to go ahead with the Baja 500 last September. So it wasn't on its normal June date. because we kept moving it back. But so we operated under strict COVID guidelines to see how it was going, and everything came out great. The racers all, did what they were supposed to do in terms of social distancing and sanitation stations and masking and all that. So that allowed us to do the Baja 1000 last year also, which was kind of the key. So we got through that for last year and get into this. But the amount of people, getting back to your question, sorry for the deviation.
Oh, no, go. That's perfect.
Is, yes, it's the volunteer status is critical to what we have for road crossing and every other aspects out on the course itself, and even around start finish line in operations. But there's fortunately a good cadre of leadership there and returning people that come down every year. So it's that part has worked. But yes, it's hundreds of people, as you already mentioned, that have to be involved to make sure that these races operate safely.
Do you guys have one person, or who does somebody get involved with or contact for volunteering for race staff? Volunteer.
Yeah, that too many channels. It could come through virtually any one of us, but it will end up down at the Ensenada office with the race director, Jose Heralva. And Hector Ponce is basically handles all our volunteers out of the office. So it goes through a process, but it's kind of nonstop all year long.
Right. Okay. Because I know that there's always, I've been down there not as many times as I wish, but I've been down there quite a bit for different races and stuff, and in different capacities, mostly with teams. And when people ask, well, how do I get involved? I always tell them, first of all, or they say they want to race, I say, first thing you need to do is go down there and volunteer on a team, or volunteer, to help the race, do something, not just build a car or a bike or whatever vehicle and just head down there to try it. I've seen so many people that have done that are just shocked and overwhelmed. Not just at the 1,000 or the 500 or the 250, but at any races, even races up in the States where they've never been to a race, and then they go race one. And I'm always amazed that people, take that avenue instead of, checking it out first somehow.
Yeah, correct. We get nonstop phone calls from which is great, from all over the U.S. They're going to go buy a new bike, or they're going to buy a truck off the lot and try to fix it up and come down. It's their bucket list. They saw one of the TV shows or one of the movies, and it's just something that they want to come and challenge, as a life challenge. But yeah, we try to intercept a lot of that and talk to them as much as possible. And in a lot of cases, we send them to a couple other series so they can get their skills down and their organizational skills down even more so. Because it's a whole different animal down there, as you already said.
Exactly.
So it's very rewarding, but very challenging at the same time, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
True. So anything that's slated for the future at SCORE that you can talk about that's coming up? Maybe something that all the SCORE people know, but maybe our other off-roaders that listen to this may not know.
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's a lot going on all the time. We're going to be introducing a couple of new initiatives here soon. And I don't wish I could tell you right now.
I know. Okay.
But they're going to be out in the next few weeks, actually. And they're going to be. We're really happy. It took many months of a lot of hard work by a lot of people making these couple projects happen. But it's that's mostly on the marketing side. Regarding regarding the racing end of it, it's kind of just hang on. There's always a lot in the works, but yeah, right now we have our solid 4-race series, and that's not going anywhere. That basically that's 12 months worth of a lot of work right there to make sure everything is done correctly and safe. But there's always new things on the horizon.
Excellent. So what about for Jim Ryan? What's new? What's exciting besides everything that you're doing at SCORE, which I know is like probably 24/7?
Yeah, it is, like everybody in our world.
Yes.
I think the new projects that we're going to be introducing here are probably what's going to be the newest items. Everything else we're working on is, like you said, kind of nonstop. But in our world, as soon as we clear the Baja 500 every year, we're working on that next year. We already released our schedule, which was great.
Nice.
For 2022, and then our sponsor base, is all secure for the next few years. We're working on all the new guys that we've been working on for the last year or two. You know how that works. It's a process, a time process, and timing and budgets and everything else. So all of that's going on right now. The show circuit is hot and heavy on the day-to-day stuff that we're working on right now. As you know, they're all back. So we have the Sand Sports show, which for us is the UTV market priority, which is we have 4 major classes there. Those numbers continue to grow. Off-Road Expo's back. It's at the Ontario Convention Center now. So we'll be involved with that. SEMA, we're involved with that. That's back. PRI is another big show, especially for us. So all of that will be happening in Q4, getting set up for 2022.
Excellent. So you don't see yourself retiring anytime soon?
No. It's there's still a lot to do. SCORE itself turns 50 years old in 2023.
Oh, nice.
So that's a big deal. Obviously, the races that are under our umbrella, we have 2 that are already eclipsed that landmark. But SCORE itself, when Mickey Thompson started it, will be 50 years old in 2023. So we'll have some things up our sleeves for that too.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, right.
So,
Did you ever see the books that we put out for the 50th anniversary?
I believe I did. I saw one. I thought one was at the Off-Road Hall of Fame induction dinner that was auctioned off or something. I think.
Oh yeah, there was a packet.
Yes.
We produced 2 big 400-page coffee table books for both the Baja 1000 50th anniversary and the Baja 500 50th anniversary as a kind of a box set.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's done well, and it's at least a recorded history of what went on there. So we might have a couple of those projects in the works in the near future.
Ah, there you go. With the 50th year coming up for SCORE, I get it. Awesome.
Maybe.
Yeah,
huh?
maybe. Jim, I want to say thank you for spending the time and coming on board and doing the interview. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I think our listeners will enjoy it and get a lot of information out of it, a lot of things I didn't know, and that means they probably didn't know either. And I appreciate it.
Very, very good. No, thanks for inviting me. It's good to talk to you, first of all, and it's been there's a lot to talk about from the past. It's just getting it organized for you.
True.
So if there's anything else after you look through this, if there's any other questions you have, just give me a call.
I will do that. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.